Oh my
Cool.
God. Nikita,
Young. Hi.
hey you. We've talked about this, doing something like this for years. I think it's cool that we're just jumping into it for the first time. We've had so many conversations on subjects from dreams to the spiritual to the emotional to the altered state. And we thought it would be cool to just have a conversation. And I guess today we're going to kind of talk about altered states we were thinking of, our experience with them. It's one of the things that I think brought us together. Like initially, we had our conversations. We both met in massage school, and I remember we just kind of hit it off with conversations and
hmm
just would geek out to them and enjoyed them. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We did. We met on the topic of dreams. So that's like an altered state.
That's totally an altered state, yeah, and we wanna definitely get into that at some point too, have a conversation on that. Yeah, altered, dreams and Thai food. I think it was Thai food
Oh
and
my
dreams.
God, yes.
Yeah, I think
We
we,
met.
like, hung out at a Thai restaurant and then we did that, so
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thai class too. We're learning Thai massage.
Thai massage. So,
Yeah.
we had the Eastern philosophy coming in from one
hmm
side, and I have Western roots, and I think just we both have a love for exploring these topics. I think that's just and it's become a big part of my life, and I think for you as well. Just you
Yeah.
know, um, I so yeah, so altered states. We were talking about this before we got started, and I really thought that you know it's such a big topic. It's it could be for those listening, for those who are going to be our first listeners, any state where whether it was brought on by taking a substance, a plant medicine, psychedelics, there's dancing, there's um, meditations, sound healing. I mean, there's so many different things um, that can bring one on. And I guess for me growing up, I grew up kind of with a little bit of a don't do drugs, straight edge kind of upbringing in a sense. And so I didn't really do anything to mess with my consciousness until like late high school, really. That's when I started experimenting, and it started with like marijuana and stuff like that, and I was drinking, and it was just partying and stuff. But I wanted to share an experience that I had that kind of really changed my whole view on plant medicine. Specifically for me, it's plant medicines, and just my whole outlook on life in general and everything. And so that was with the amazing plant medicine mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
psilocybin. And so the story goes, um, I had a friend who had been telling me about him for a while, and I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It seems like I've heard stories, I've heard about bad trips, and I was very, apprehensive about it. But he had done them. He was a good friend. I trusted him, and we decided to do them one night. And boy, was I wrong! Like, wow. I so the way the night was, it was a full moon night by total happenstance. Like we didn't plan that out, and we had this amount of mushrooms that was actually about perfect for two people. I think it was for a first time. I think it was about 2 grams each or something like that.
hmm
Which
Yeah.
and you know we ate them. I think we had sushi that night. We had sushi and we ate, the mushrooms. And for a while, nothing was happening. So we kind of were like, well, maybe not, maybe it's just going to be nothing. and I don't remember what we were listening to at the time, but we were listening to music, and we were in my garage at my mom's house, and I remember, the music just started to sound a little more intense. It was like I was like, "Okay, this is cool," you know? And at one point, I think we both kinda came up at the same time, and we looked at each other, and we're just like, "Oh my god," like, amazing, you know? Like, the music was so vivid and rich, and laughter became a thing where we were just enjoying the moment so much. And one of the things about this whole night, which kind of is why I wanted to share the story, is I had had this idea of, you know, we're going to have fun. It's just going to be this thing where we like have a great time. It's going to be a lot of laughing and fun. But it quickly turned into this like profound like moment in time between me and a friend of mine. We're still great friends to this day. I mean, we were just blowing our minds with how beautiful nature was. At one point, we went outside because the power went out. You know, it was a full moon night, and we're like, well, let's just step outside for a little bit, you know, get out of, you know, we were on the computer and we are getting away from the electronics and stuff. And I remember like the tree in my backyard was beautiful, and I had a pet cat who was like rubbing up on my leg, and it looked like I remember telling my friends like it looks like a god from like Egypt or something. Um, and yeah, there was this moment where we were just kind of both in awe of Mother Nature, of the moon, of our lives, the fact that we were alive. I'd never had a conversation like this in general, but with just like a friend too. We were both just like, "Oh my God, isn't this amazing?" Like how precious the gift of life is, and there were so many good moments. And I don't know if I'll go into like the whole thing right now, but that was for me. And I will go into it, but like I want to hear from you too. But I'm just yeah, it just totally. I was so surprised, and I respected it so much more. You know, it wasn't simply a party drug, and this state was sacred. And we had this. It kind of took me from hey, let's have fun to oh my god, life is profound. You know, I had it. I had you know this idea of what I thought, and of course things could be abused, but I like this general idea of what a plant medicine was, which I didn't call at the time, just sort of psychedelic, was like it was totally different than what I could have ever imagined, and that changed the course of my life since then. Of just how I looked at the world, how precious I saw life, and how I view myself in this world. And so, yeah, and that took me down path after path of refinding different interests that I'd lost since childhood, rekindling this spark of like imagination and excitement in life. And so, yeah, and I think that's what eventually led me to meeting you, you know, just the path that I was on and just everything and the people I've met since then.
Right.
And so, yeah, friend.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah. Mushrooms, Theonanakat, these magical sentient beings, we're so blessed to have them, to commune with them. They're such teachers to us. And I'm so grateful for these medicines because it's like our soul is wanting this experience, right? It's like we're here in this physical body, and sometimes it might feel trapped because we're in a system, or let's call it like an inverted matrix system in society with all these conditionings. And sometimes it's like we know there's this like divine seed that's like there's something more, yet like our consciousness is like fragile, so you can't just bust it wide open. So we have our own journey to like how these plant medicines and experiences almost like whisper to us and they call us,
Mm,
and which is so beautiful to like tap in with our own spirit and intuition and then commune with that of another plant or medicine spirit too, and then it becomes part of us. And inherently in quantum physics and everything's connected, so it makes sense that we're weaving together and we're following these like unseen vibrations. So I'm grateful for these plant medicine teachers. They're so profound.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
I
gonna
was
say
just gonna say you mentioned well how these plant medicines will like well in plant in quantum physics, you know. I think one of the things that was so profound that night, that first night that I did the mushrooms, was seeing the connection in all things and in nature, and kind of having this like, I get what they mean now moment. Like I hear this, I am, and even not just in quantum physics, but in spiritual teachings of the oneness and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm seeing how everything was touching the earth and coming up from it, and I'm in it. And I just was like, oh, and I get why poetry and all this stuff exists. But yeah, you just reminded me of that right now. And I remember that being one of the most profound moments of that experience. So,
Thank
yeah.
you for sharing. Yeah, it unlocks those dormant, magic within us.
Yeah.
um, I would say for me, yeah, plant medicines have been just, I'm just so grateful for them. I would say first began my journey of exploring my consciousness with these other substances and medicines with cannabis. I would say cannabis would be the first medicine I communed with, and
Mm.
it was really fun. Obviously, I was a teenager. I was like 14, I think, so it might have been so early. My brain's still developing and everything, but you know, um, I trust it. I trust it. So I had a really good, fun time with cannabis. And it wasn't legal, so it had its own energetic imprint of like how the experience could be. So from that, I would say, the mushroom medicine, I was introduced to that too around the same time. And what it helped me see was it was a pretty dark time in my life. I had some very intense experiences that altered my reality and perception of the world without any medicine. So I would say that when mushrooms found me, I also started to see the interconnectedness of all life, and it showed me that this reality wasn't it, only it, and
Mm.
it expanded my perception. And so, whatever I may have been feeling that seemed so dark and the turmoil I was experiencing within myself, it helped me see that there's more to life, there's more to all of this. And it gave me hope, and it just showed me that you know, yeah, that I could heal. It almost answered all these internal questions that I have. I mean, this is so long ago, but it still sticks with me today of like just being that journey that revealed to me that there's more to life and reminded me that it's really cool with the synesthesia. It's like you can hear
Mm.
color or see sound, and I thought that was really amazing. Like just what is the fabric of this reality made of? So it felt really real. I mean, even the way we perceive is like the way our eyes are structured, everything's upside down and then it's right side up. So it's our proprioception with the construct of this reality is so not what it seems. So I appreciate like being with these medicines to show us just a different imaginative world that perhaps we had as children, and somewhere along the line reality sets in and we lose our imagination. And this, I feel, can help reignite that, which is so important for the way we manifest things in our life, our
Mm.
ability to imagine and believe and know. So, yeah, that was like my earlier experiences. And since then, like, they have been such an integral part of my life. I mean, I work with these medicines so intimately, designing ceremonial great chocolates, and definitely come on a big journey of honoring and respecting and working with them as a healing for our bodies, our communities, our minds. And it's continuing to evolve. So yeah, I appreciate plant medicines. I appreciate embarking on different experiences with them, feeling more connected to nature, which is us. We are nature. There is no separateness. And I feel that's a lot of where disease comes in. I studied Ayurveda as well, and it's like to forget our inherent connection to nature as nature is what starts so much of this separation mentality. And that's just where we start to feel more porous or might feel like we're missing something. And yeah, to remind ourselves that we are the elements are within us, around us. It's beautiful to enhance that experience and build like the mind body connection as one entity of the oneness that is connected to everything around us. And that's why I really appreciate psychedelics, plant medicines, entheogens, even non psychoactive plant medicines like the
Mm.
herbs and everything. Yeah.
Appreciating those altered states, regardless of how they come to be. Girl, you are preaching. Beautiful, beautiful story. I love the way you illustrated that. Um, yeah, you mentioned, discovering that there was like through plant medicines that there was more, like this wasn't it. Not, that this wasn't all it. Like this reality, this waking state reality that um, most of us spend most of our time in, which is definitely needed. Obviously, we need to do that, to function in life, is not all there is. And I think that was one of the moments for me and through my journeys with plant medicines was there's so much out there that I don't want to, maybe, yeah, that I'm missing out on, or at least I should spend some time with getting to know other parts of myself, but just other parts of reality that are existing all around us that influence us, regardless of whether we're aware of them or not. And if we're not taking time to connect with the world in that part, there's just a huge, I realized I was like, oh man, there's so much I'm missing out on. There's so much depth and nature and stillness and things that are subtle that you can miss, um, that you wouldn't know unless you kind of jumped into these realms. I think that's been one of the things that has, and then it's again for me, it's been a way to remind myself of who I was when I was a child, and I guess in a sense, I feel like what was coming back for me was how vivid my imagination used to be and how playful. And
Mm.
I've had for so long, because of where life tends to take you in our modern society, kind of left a lot of that behind and kind of thought of that as like, that's a waste of time. That's silly. That's not going to get you anywhere. Not consciously, but in a sense, this is kind of where I had gone, in life. And having that reawakened within me and realizing the value of having playfulness, having like imagination and, um, that colorful tapestry of life that it was so rich when I was a kid that had kind of gone away. Having that come back just brought back so much life into myself. I feel like, yeah, it just brought so much life back and realized purpose that I didn't know had left at all. And now I'm like, oh, okay, wow, I'm remembering things. I'm remembering um, just how rich things could be. And another thing I was going to say too was I, prior to having that first experience, kind of I had, because of I had looked up the typical Google, definitions of things, and it was all about, well, it's giving you this fun game, brain chemistry, and then once it wears off, and you know, I've my experience, to me, which struck me as surprising, was I felt like a lot of times these plant medicines, I was interacting with them. It wasn't just my mind was altered. I felt separate entities. I felt an actual converse, like it was like me and the mushrooms had their own identity, and we were having a conversation. And that's what I was also really, alerted to, the profoundness of these plants. I'm like, this is a spirit we're dealing with. This isn't,
Mhm.
I took something and now I'm just with myself having fun colors. It was like, no, I'm out actually in, like, there's something else here with me. This plant
Yeah.
has intelligence, I guess, is where I'm going with
Yeah.
that. And that was not expected from me because of how I had been brought up and what I had heard. And so, yeah, uh, yeah, this is,
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's so beautiful is they do have their own intelligence. I mean, there's so many different plants and natural substances within these plants, like DMT as the spirit molecule, and
yes.
Mother Aya, Yahe. So it's like that grandmother essence. We have San Pedro, we have Wachuma is San Pedro, and Peyote and hikuri, and all these different medicines that our ancestors and indigenous people would work with because they knew this. Like, this is the way that they would pray and be with their communities and their people, and in right relationship with the land, as being so alive. And so much of the West would dare in different programs that like try to scare us away from knowing who we truly are, just for mind control. There's so
Yeah.
many things here with the frequency
Oh,
that try to, control our minds, yet these everything is alive. I would say everything has a consciousness, everything has an essence, everything has a spirit. So if we take the time to truly listen, but the thing I notice is a lot of people don't know how to listen to our own selves or our own heart, our own gut, right? So it's like I could see how that could be difficult for people to even give that type of trust to something outside of themselves. And so yeah, they all do have an essence that we get the opportunity to commune with and have a conversation with and merge with ultimately, and it just adds to our original blueprint. It helps us like in the remembrance of why we're truly here. And
mm.
I appreciate that too. Like, there's a lot of death and rebirth that happens with communing with these
Oh,
plants.
yes.
People have the
That's
ego
a huge.
disillusionment. Have you experienced anything like that, like
Yeah,
total ego
I've had
disillusionment?
yes, I definitely, well, you mentioned something, I forgot what it was. I'll have to when I think of that, I'll go back to it. Yeah, I have. I've had experiences of initially starting off with, like, terror of forgetting my name, not knowing where I was, and that in and of itself was just, losing grip on reality is, that's the classic, you know, idea of losing grip on reality and having a moment of just complete darkness and fear and fetal position, and I'm alone and I took this thing and what did I do? And losing touch with your identity, this identity that I've built up, up until at the time 23, 24 years old or something, and having that just disappear, I couldn't access that. And what I was left with. And initially, it was a place of like, I didn't know if I was going to be able to come back. Um, and I don't, there's been a few experiences like that, but I have one where I remember for whatever reason, I was able to remember some music or something. And there was, I think what I needed to do was I needed to like soothe myself again. And I needed to, it would like you were going into trust earlier and learning
Mm,
how, like how are we even gonna, trust a plant medicine if most of us, we've lost, this connection to nature, we've lost a connection to ourselves. And it was a song that I've loved since childhood, and I started to hum the song,
mm,
and almost immediately I was just invaded with this energy of love and like a motherly type energy, a nurturing energy that basically it came back full swing and was like, you are like, it showed me who I was, and like, and you have this connection to yourself, and it's there, and you have access to this whenever you want, and there's nothing to fear even out here. You might, you've walked a long way from home, but home is here. Like, you're on planet Earth, you're in this universe, and if you're in this universe, you're home. Like, the sense of you, there is no losing it. Like, you've accumulated this identity, but at the same time, you there's yeah, I don't know where it's going with that, but there's so many versions and different dimensions where you exist,
right. As
and
multi-dimensional
you can
beings.
access them. Yeah, I don't know where it's going with that, but um,
But no, it's true, like, you
Yeah.
bring up a great point, like, we see these things during the experience, right? But what
Yes,
about after? Sometimes we get back in our habitual thoughts
that's
and
the
circles,
thing.
and so, like, integration is so important, and even preparing yourself beforehand. So I was told by a teacher before delving into anything that's going to alter your consciousness as like a back door to spirituality, it can really cause a disruption in what we deem as our foundation or our very fabric of our reality. And I used to be afraid to take psychedelics because I didn't know, like, alone. I was afraid to take them alone, so I'd always want to be with someone. And then I remember the moment I took like LSD alone, and it became amazing for me to like get to know me for me as somebody who's so empathic and picking up on other people and things. I didn't have a moment to like truly go within and see how I noticed the patterns and the symbols all around me. And the minute I was brave enough to, be on my own and just accept that, I was noticing things that I may have not noticed had I been with other people, and I got to really see what feel as my foundational reality, and to remind myself, like, to have an anchor. So that brought me back to my body and my breath. Anytime I felt like I'm going somewhere and I'm losing control, I remember that I have my breath. And that would
Mm,
really just anchor me back into the present moment and remind me that I'm here, I'm safe. And yeah, it's pretty remarkable because although we might hear the messages and we feel like we want to remember, like this happens to me so often too, like, okay, I'm going to remember this, I'm going to remember this. And then I'm back in the wheel and just kind of sometimes I forget, right? It's like a constant forgetting and remembering, but the ultimate journey of remembering our soul and who we are. And some people in their multidimensional selves can remember past lives and have different
yeah,
abilities, psychic abilities and things like this. So
beautiful
it
topic
is
as well.
right. That's all another world. But it's paramount to know our foundational reality and have practices that ground us, that we can integrate, that we are gentle with ourselves as we come back into the way the reality is almost created because of conscious or collective consciousness, right? We've agreed that things are a certain way, and so that affects our reality. Um, yeah, I was also just thinking of when we talk about altered states, it reminded me of this experiment I was doing with the sensory deprivation float tank. And
Right.
I
You
yeah,
introduced me to that
oh
whole
my
world.
god,
I'd
I
heard
have
about it, but you the first who did it, and I was like, you told me all about it.
yeah,
Got me into it,
I
so
haven't been able to float in so long, and I'm seriously missing it from my life
same.
because my friend closed his down. But anyways, I was part of a study called known as the Awesome technique, so alternate waking states induction method, by Richard
Mm,
Bonk. And so
hmm.
I was reading Dream Yoga, and I was working on how to achieve lucid dreaming. And I had an out of body experience one time when I was in the float tank. It was my first time having that. And I was not on any substances. I have experimented with multiple substances in the float tank. And I would tell you the most
Two
profound
journeyers. Two
I will
pioneers.
it was pretty cool. And I will say the most profound experience was sober. And that was right after I did a 10-day silent meditation vipassana. So right
Yes.
after the 10 days silent, I went to the float tank. I was doing my meditations in there and like left my body. My body was like paralyzed. So I was scared because I haven't had this experience. Shot out my body. I could see 360 degrees infinitely around me, like all stars. And I was about to go somewhere, but I was frightened because I'm in a dark tank alone, naked. So I'm like, come back.
A little vulnerable.
And oh, you're so vulnerable. So I was like, what just happened? Like I didn't freak out, but I was like, what was that? So then I learned of this methodology. And so I wanted to explore use all my different states of consciousness using the tank as a tool. And it was a little short lived because the pandemic and everything happened.
Right.
so it got shut down. But I was able to achieve the lucid dreaming state, and yeah, it's like our different brain frequencies, right? Because the tank helps us get to the theta wave state where our body is healing itself, and we're in this complete surrender. And I just thought that was incredible that to build the foundation, right? To not like rely on these medicines to show us something trippy or something different, but to know that these states exist. Like from pure, we don't have the time these days, in our society to just meditate for hours on end, right? So, but the sages have been able to achieve these states without
Yeah.
any of the substances. And they say that once you reach these states, you don't need these substances or different medicines. However, we change our perspective and our intentions behind how we want to commune with them. And that is key, like our intentions when we choose to sit with mushrooms and we choose to sit with grandmother ayahuasca. And it's very, very important to do that. And yeah, I remember I sat with, it's not a plant medicine, but Bufo alvarius, which is 5-MeO DMT, which is about 6 times more potent than DMT. And I had not had like an ego disillusionment experience before, because I feel this part of myself was always protecting myself. Like I didn't want to lose who I believe my identity and myself to be. And when I sat with this medicine, I achieved that, and I was using the help of different mudras to like this is a surrender mudra, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna sit with this mudra, which is different hand gestures that can help with just the mental connection. So I'm sitting there with this mudra, ready to surrender who I believe myself to be, to truly know who I am. And it's like that saying, like you were saying, like some to be with that essence was showing me that I carry the altar within me, and that I'm here for, like, I feel like I'm just beginning. Like I'm remembering why I'm here as a warrior of light, as a warrior of love, and to achieve harmony within, to reflect harmony without, and like all these different remembrances were coming through because I surrendered who I thought myself to believe, who society told me to believe, and I got to see who I truly am. And that's a constant death and rebirth. Like the contraction and the expansion was happening so much, and it's like our breath, inhale, exhale. And it just showed me that we are the microcosm of the macrocosm of a fractal holographic experience, And how do we translate that to function in society, right? So we get to take little action steps that remind us, right? Like I'll light a candle or I'll light an incense, I'll carry water with me, speak to our waters. People don't rem- see that all of this has memory and intelligence, and we are, our vibration of our sound is literally circling back to us, creating our reality. And yeah, I'm grateful for these teachers and knowing that, and my practices without these, but I'm glad they led me to this inner explorative journey,
Yeah.
that connected me back to what our ancient ancestors knew.
That's beautiful, friend. That experience, we're gonna have to do like an episode. I want to hear it with the Bufo, that
Oh,
whole, and I didn't know you were incorporating mudras and how that played into it. I love that you're bringing up and like the importance of and what these plant medicines do. It's not, they kind of show you ways in which to get to these places without solely relying on them. Like this idea, and I think that is one of the ways that these plant medicines unfortunately are painted in a bad way, when I think it is possible to go off the deep end if some people, because of what they've gone through or whatever, they have a reliance, they have these beautiful experiences, and then they might then only seek that way of, or want to stay in that. And it's I think for me, the one of the more beautiful outcomes, or that I've received from my journeys. Most of my journeys have been with mushrooms. I haven't gone out and explored as much as you have, but I've had many journeys, and I think I've been able to take away different perspectives. So I've walked away from some of these experiences um, with knowledge now on what I could do in my normal state, and how to then go forward with life. And I think that's key, is when you've had one of these experiences. And this brings into the whole idea of doing them consciously, doing them with a purpose, having a ceremony involved. People have
Mhm.
access to these plants, and there's different ways to get into an altered state. But I think the context and the reason why the indigenous peoples of this world have been so successful with them is because it's within the fabric of their society. There's rites of passage, there's communities, they live in this physical world. They have to hunt and survive, and they had to be very physical in this world. And then they have the shaman, and then there's the elders who can look over the tribe and who can go out of body, and they have communications and connections with non-physical beings and plant beings. And there's a whole world that exists, just instead of just the physical, that they've been able to connect with. And they've integrated both, I think. And I think that is one of um the keys. If there's a key insight that I've taken away, is um how do we have these experiences and then have that translate into our life. And I've definitely, with mushrooms, I've had so many times. And for me, one of the things that has always come up was, like, young, you have to be more compassionate towards yourself. You have to show yourself
Mhm.
kindness for the life you live. I think so many, this is one of the themes that have come up for, I think a lot of people have had this, but I think one of the things plant medicine show you, it is like a mirror. It's going to show you everything. It's going to show you everything from the things that you've done that you're like, oh, that wasn't cool. That wasn't, kind, whatever. It's going to show you, because those things are buried within you. And regardless of how you felt at the time, there's a part of you that doesn't feel so good about that, I think. That's how I feel.
Mhm.
And there's the times where a lot of it was how we treat ourselves. I think, unfortunately, we are sometimes our worst enemy. The mind is very powerful. I don't think we have a really, generally speaking, like a strong understanding of emotion, at least in Western cultures. I know that to be the case. The society that I grew up in, and one of the predominant messages I would receive is like, man, you're so hard on yourself, and you've been really hard on yourself. You've been, cruel to yourself. And there's pieces of you that are young children that are like basically trapped and locked away, that you have not let out because of your own, like, strict, rules and, way of being. And that has been, and so what was beautiful about seeing that and being on an experience that was telling me that was, now, okay, now that the experience is over, now this is something I need to work on. Like, to me, it's like, okay, you've had this experience, we've shown you this gift that you can't always get access to, but now that you have it, you can do things in your physical life, you can do things in your awakened state, that you can now work on this, and bringing that, the profoundness of the experience, of the visions and all, the things that you encounter, and then now putting that into practice. And I think that is one of the healthiest ways to have, it's like, hey, I just had this beautiful experience, I went on this retreat, I had this, experience, of these insights came to me, and now I want to incorporate them and build from that. And I think that, to me, is such a beautiful way to look at it. Like, we have this world where we could connect with plants and this divine realm, and then we have our jobs, we have our things we have to do, we have kids to take care of, we have families, relationships in this world, we have bills. And I don't think they have to be separate. I don't think it has to be like that and this. It's like, no, we live in this society, but like, this is the gift. We can bring this, we can bring these powerful spiritual teachings into our lives that and they do have such benefits to the busy modern lives that we live in. And I think that's been one of the gifts, is like being able to bring this and apply them to my, I some of the things that I've noticed with myself that have changed have just been my ability to zoom out of a stressful situation and see it for what it is, and realize that yes, I am here temporary, but I do have obligations in this world. It doesn't mean that because I have the perspective, like I think you share, that we've been here before, that I do believe that the soul is eternal and we've had many different lives and stuff. But that also doesn't mean that now I could say, well, who cares then about this world? Because and being able to have both of those perspectives and bring in these insights has just been what's yeah, one of the best things for me, the best ways to work with these that I've found. Yeah, I think that would be when I envision how is the future going to look, because I know that what the good thing in my opinion is that the world is so much more open to this whole conversation now. I think there's been a lot. There's been more books written, there's been studies, and there's been so many people have found relief from just deep inner pain through going inward in general, being mindful, and some of these spiritual teachings and practices are now being more accepted. And I definitely I see a world where they both coincide, where they both can live in harmony, and that there's just so many deep messages that are and things that I think we're missing out on if we don't. Like if we, I think as human beings, we're spiritual, we're physical, we're so many. We have to, you know, I mean, to each their own. I'm not here to tell people what to live, but
Right.
so much, and
Yeah.
because I've felt these things, and I'm like, I'm so much more happier now, and it's not something that I have to rely on. Like I don't like I need to do this thing or else I'm not going to. It's like no, I
Mhm.
everyone like but it's something where beautiful. Like it's amazing that it's available.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not for everyone, and it doesn't need to be for everyone, and definitely you wanna check in medically, like, make sure no one's on any kinda, like, SSRIs or anything that could
oh yeah,
compromise
that's
psychiatric
the
things.
product at the beginning. Yeah.
Uh,
We're just talking to
and
everybody. We're just sharing our experiences and
and it could be, like, good for, a like, I see it like, I wish I could share with my parents or something,
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
to see what I just to see if it could help them because of just the experiences I know of, right? And it would be in the proper, like, supplemental ways, not like a journey, just using
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
actual medicinal properties of it at a almost like homeopathic medicine type of way, where it's so subtle,
Yeah,
but it has a
yeah.
profound experience type of thing. So, yeah,
I
because
love that.
we've had the opportunity to have such cool, like, experiences that have also translated into profound healing experiences that we probably didn't know we needed or that would be so healing, right? Because initially, I was having a lot of bad trips, a lot,
Mm. Oh,
and I would say my life, like you said, it shows you everything. Things you might have missed on, ways you acted, behaved, things you've allowed, where we've had self-betrayal, like so many different things. And it's like, wow, it's a direct mirror. And I think I posted something the other day about the summary of every philosopher that has ever said anything was to just look in the mirror. And like, I feel a lot of people have a hard time doing that. A lot of people I've noticed have a hard time, difficult time being alone in solitude, in silence, to be with their own thoughts, and it's challenging. Like,
I experienced that.
yeah, when I sat Vipassana and I'm sitting there with my thoughts, I was like, wow, like sometimes our thoughts take us on a ride
Right?
and But I learned in that, I was like, "Wow, I really have no one to blame because I've created my own reality based off my thoughts and my actions and my beliefs." And
Which
not
is
all
both a realization, but a powerful thing to realize too. It's like, "Oh, okay, I am in the driver's
absolutely.
seat." Like, "Okay."
It's the journey of empowerment, you know?
Yeah,
Like, we are empowered beings. We get to take ownership of the life we've created, and it's not an end all. It's like, wow, what a beautiful realization to have the courage to see where we're at and where we're going, where we want to go, is like just taking that accountability. And yeah, I started to see
yeah,
like where my life was out of alignment. And that just comes with, it's very individualistic. It's like, what is our internal compass? What is our integrity like? What is our morals like? How do we interact with ourselves, talk to ourselves, our families, our comrades, our elders, children? How do we treat the land that we're on? You know what I mean? It's really, everything does come from within. So depending on who you are can also drastically affect the way you experience these other substances, right? And medicine.
tenfold, yeah.
Plants.
Um, speaking of society and how, there are like we mentioned, there are some people who maybe shouldn't or it's not for
Yeah.
everyone. I would say that I am often surprised at, in day-to-day conversations, because 'cause I'm someone who will I don't stay on the surface. I love to go deep. And so if I get to know someone, a coworker or someone, I'll end up getting into dreams or something. And I'm often surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised, I think, at how many people have had what I would consider um, a spiritual experience in some way, or have had memory, I'll start a conversation, I'll have someone who is seemingly, and I'm being judgmental, like just like a guy's guy who's not, they're not talking about anything like dreams or anything like that. And then they're like, yeah, you know what though? Like when I was a kid, I had this experience when I felt like I saw a spirit, or I had this interaction, or I had a dream, but and then they might kind of push it away. But I've been so surprised that like there's so many people who I think have had glimpses into other realities, or depth in this reality, that they just, for a moment, maybe something happened, something else profound with a spiritual experience or something of that nature, and that it's almost like they're like, yeah, which to me just shows that it's there naturally, like it's just
Mhm.
hasn't been tapped into. It's like everyone has the ability to tap into deeper realms, to have experiences regardless of whether they take anything, and I think there's ways that people could bring in that richness into their lives, of course, without, and I think some of the, like, the mundane things, like you mentioned, like incense and candles, small little things that have been a part of our culture for so long, and different there you go, different reasons why people use them. But I think there are so many simple ways that we could find inner peace, that we can go within. And there's these little rituals, and there's little like remnants of that in our cultures that exist. And
Yeah.
through our holiday traditions and Halloween and things like this, where there's older meanings to things that we might just consider like, well, I like the smell of this, but why do you like the smell of this incense? Well, it makes me well, it's bringing you into a different, slightly different. I'm sure if it was measured, that there's something happening to you when something, or with like the crystals and the mineral spirits, where
Gosh.
I, as a kid, got into them because I was into fossils in ancient stuff, but I also enjoyed looking at them, and I thought, well, I enjoy looking at them, and I was like, well, I realized later, like, dude, they're making you feel good, whether it's what the book that is on the shelf at the spiritual shop is saying, or is it just because there's something with the beauty of nature that can bring up your vibration, that can cause you, to have certain a response within you that can bring you up. And um, all that to say that, there's so many ways in which we do these things without knowing them, and then there's ways that if we're interested in you bringing some of this like magic into our lives, that you can do stuff. And and it could be your own way. It doesn't have to be. I think some people too, like, are curious about things, and then they might get turned off by because they saw one person doing it who seemed a little over the top with it, or and they think, well, that I'm not like that, and it's like it's well, these things are for everyone to have. It's there's these um, nature is here for all of us to experience in our own way, and I think there's just something to be said about being able or having a chance to quiet the mind or to sit with oneself and to try to do it, even if it's like unbearable. I think we all know on some level too, with the advent of like not just phones but now with like
Mm,
scrolling,
mm,
and how we all kind of joke about how bad it is, and like I can't even be with myself, and it's kind of this joke, but it's like I think we're all on some level we know that we are not in our bodies a lot. We are in, or we're in our minds too much, or we're overthinking. Um, so there is some recognition amongst like the masses where it's like there is something that's needed. And again, this conversation can go in so many places, but
mm.
I feel like yeah, that's one thing that I'm just going over. Just yeah.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, when we think about our soul and how our soul is learning about our human experience, it's through our senses, our five senses, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, and it's informing us of like what this reality is. So when we look at gems and crystals, it's doing something to us. Like the way they grow is a spiral, like our DNA. When we touch things like tactily, it sends information to our body, what we hear. Like they say, when we're born, the first sense that comes is our sound. And think about our vibrations and om and humming and the vibration that it brings to our body. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like this is all within us, right? And so when we use these other, we can like stare at a candle and do a meditation and then almost become that. It's quite magical, right? And
Yeah,
it's
I love that
it's
word.
how we choose to view things, right? With that childlike wonder. And it is available to us if we are deeply listening. And it can be scary. The first time I was meditating at the ocean, it brought up so much. All the thoughts came rushing in all at once. I could not handle it. I had to run away from it. I was so scared. I wanted to almost vomit. I was like, I can't do this, but you just got to be brave. Be brave, be courageous, cross the threshold, make it a practice. And it's beautiful to see when you look back, it's like, wow, this is somewhere I didn't think I would be, yet I'm here. And that's going to continue to happen as we evolve, as we expand. And it's, yeah, it's beautiful to be able to remember that we're not alone in these experiences
Mhm,
too, even though it
mhm.
feels like it can be lonely, but we're not. So, yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. No, I think, yeah, the idea of telling, or encouraging people to, you know, it's it is difficult to sit with yourself and to, with your thoughts. But yeah, the idea of, bravery, courage, and the journey is sometimes a little bumpy, I guess I wanna say, is it's not there's gonna be moments that are uncomfortable, but you're also gonna gain so much insight, and you grow so much as a person by doing some things sometimes that are a little uncomfortable, that it's the uncomfort, the contrasts that can occur, whether it's a psychedelic experience or just a moment on the beach with yourself in meditation. And one thing I would just, if anything is taken away from the conversation that we're having, is just the importance of getting to know yourself through whatever means, and even if it's small. And I think that is something that anyone could take away, or resonate with to some extent, is there are so many distractions in our modern world, um, and it doesn't take much to find even just a moment of quiet, of silence where you can actually just kind of take like an inventory and ask yourself, how am I doing? How am I doing right now? How's my breath? Oh, I'm breathing a little fast. Like, why is that? And kind of, oh, okay, I had this altercation earlier. I was driving, or I'm kind of on edge, right? Oh, well, I'm in this relationship right now. Or I have this financial thing over my head. And that just doing that and letting yourself know that, hey, I'm checking in with you, man. Like, I know you got a lot on your plate, but you also, let's make sure we check in. Let's and find some way to do that. And it literally be 5 minutes in your car, or just, taking a break, just a quick little, am I all right? Maybe you are all right. Maybe you're great. Maybe things are like, no, I'm actually good. There's this thing I need to do. But you might find, no, actually, ooh, this is something that I've been avoiding, or yeah, this thing has been lingering and it's
Yeah.
starting to eat at me. This is actually, it's becoming more than it's taking more from me than it's giving, or it's becoming bigger in my life. And I think doing, we got to check in, I think, in some way.
Yeah. And if
you know
when we do take that time to check in and we feel what we're feeling, it's okay to also ask for help, Involve community. I think that's the next step. Is a lot of people,
oh
they sit with that, but then they don't ask for the support or the assistance that they might need. We can't
yeah.
do it, and it's okay to have moments of solitude, and community healing is so vital.
Oh
It's
my
okay
god.
to ask.
We are missing, I mean, when we talk about, when I think about indigenous cultures and what we've lost, and I think a big part of that was the community and the support. And not just, I mean, even just, childcare. I have a daughter, and I just know the time and effort it takes that goes into raising a child, and time, and just having that, but also like having a doctor in a tribe who you can go to for not just physical ailments, but like, mental and spiritual, emotional stress, and having that within your community that you can go to. And yeah, I always recommend to people, because I'm really into the emotional stuff. Like, I mean, you can do a lot on your own, and if that is all you have, like, don't feel you're doomed or anything, by any means. Like, you can do so much. But if you have a friend, if you have someone, even if it's online, I know a lot of people are cut off from physical connection, unfortunately. You
Mhm.
could have some kind of connection where at least sharing with what you're going through, and someone else, maybe it's two people who can just at least share, what's going through, like what they're going through, and get it out of you, and and bounce ideas off of people, and just getting it out and feeling that connection with someone else and feeling seen is just super important. I know for in our society, and I think it's the same for both men and women, but for men especially, I know, and growing up as I am, like this idea of like weakness around asking for help or being vulnerable. And that was something I had to really work through and overcome. And it was probably one of the biggest things that I've worked through and still working through, to an extent. So no one feel bad out there, just get better at it. But
Yeah.
I think that is unfortunate, because everyone is going through something, and no one wants, no one, but most people are not, like, they don't want to bring it up. And it's like that we're all like in this, turmoil and this pain at times. And it's like, no, we need each other. We need to be able to share this stuff. It feels so much better when you have someone you can share something like that with. Like, even if the problem is existing, just having talked about it, and you're like, oh my god, what a relief. It's no longer just right here, in like, oh,
Right.
it's like, okay, I got an idea, I got some insights from the other person. It's like, it's kind of moving. I'm kind of back to myself again, just having
Yeah.
that is crucial, I feel
It's a
like.
constant thing. It's a constant thing too. As long as we're alive, we're gonna constantly be, evolving through similar things and reaching new thresholds. So once we find ways of alchemy that work for us, we can those tools in our toolbox, like if it's being barefoot on the earth, if it's sitting next to a tree, if it's listening to the way the leaves rustle, if it's cuddling your cat or whatever, hugging somebody, journaling, writing poetry, moving the body, breathing, like
Mm.
man, like, shaking it out, tapping it out, screaming sometimes, to release the energy. Like, yeah, there's
Art.
many ways
Yeah,
that are
art
available.
is a big one,
Art.
and I think for people who think, I know for a lot of guys are really creative with, whether it's they're carpenters or mechanics, and I think there's ways to find these states when you're in doing what you love, do what you love, like, no matter what it is. If you're doing what you're loving, you're in a state. So, it doesn't, but I think nature is always something I recommend because I think most people could find that, it's accessible and it's whether it's just parking somewhere, going for a walk. I think most people know like sometimes like, I need to get out of the house, and we've all
Yeah.
said that, like, I've been indoors all.
Yeah.
We know, and it makes sense. Like, why wouldn't it, are we the only animals that need to be indoors all day? No, obviously not. So there's
Age.
that's a whole other, this lack of connection thing to the planet. But yeah, in whatever way that is feels normal or good to you, I think, is what we can all do. It's available, for people who are seeking it. If, for those who are struggling, it can be subtle, it can be small, it doesn't have to be I mean, and it can eventually get amazing and huge ideas and stuff, but you can start with something small, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Cultivate that mental, emotional fortitude and that inner peace. It's a journey, and we meet beautiful people along the way. Then we build trust within ourselves and trust with each other. And yeah, it's beautiful to heal in that way together. Yeah. I think we sometimes complicate things, but I mean, and it's not our fault, but it can be simple. We've just been led to believe differently. Like we forget that we need good sunlight, good water, good air, good food,
Crazy, right?
some joy, and yeah.
In order to
Um,
thrive, definitely do. I really enjoyed seeing you, friend. I'm glad we got to do this for like our first time. We've been talking about this for a while. If anyone watched and enjoyed, I'm glad you guys got to be part of that. We are hopefully going to do this more often, and this is my kitchen. We're probably going to use a better app to do it much better next time. I have lighting. I actually do YouTube videos sometimes, and Nikita does her own thing. I think we just wanted to do something. It's right before the holidays, and to have just really a connection and see who else is out there who vibes with this kind of thing, and hopefully make this like a regular thing. So, to everyone out there, happy holidays, be safe, and that's yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your realness, your authenticity, and exploring these deep topics with me. I really appreciate you, and it's so good to see you. And I'm so open to do more of this. So thank you, and thank you
Thank
all.
you as well to Nikita. You are a dear friend, and I feel like we could do full episodes on some of your journeys because we've had so many conversations, and you've had some really amazing experiences, and we'll definitely, yeah, it'll be fun coming up with
Yeah,
ideas.
just stay tuned.